Ladies and gentlemen, it's Protoss here for Prototype number 60. We're going to call this one Weekend Warriors, and you'll see why very soon. I hope everybody has been having a good June. It's been a hectic month for me, which is why it's been a while since the last podcast, if you're keeping tabs on it in the moment. Well, let's talk about some of the stuff that has been going on. Most importantly, I think, the team game focus that has been happening lately. But we will also cover some of the recent caster-related developments, right? Commentator-related developments. And, of course, be covering some of Neblime's efforts to spread the word to different people. And we'll probably round up a little bit with not just the community roundup, but some more Askosi design thoughts. And after that, we go into the coffee questions, where I have 5 questions waiting, including one by our most recent $3 a month coffee member. It's going to be Enozlliks. Shout out to that guy. Let's get into it. By the way, I should probably warn you guys that this episode will be a little bit heavy on the community roundup and coffee questions, but we will be back to more balanced episodes in terms of their length and where the actual video length goes when we get into episode 61 next week. So, again, our first topic of discussion here is going to be the team game focus that we've seen start to crop up. Sure, the most numerous amount of games that have been played are 1v1s, but now that we're thinking about doing a 2 versus 2 tournament, which I'm going to talk about in this very section, I think we're seeing a lot more team game focus. We got Jujic out here as a relatively new map maker, pumping out a lot of 2v2 maps. Obviously, in the community roundup, I'll be going over some of the new maps and such. We've got a lot of them to go over because, again, it's been a little bit. And the work has continued, even though the podcasts took a pause. Now, the other thing that's worth pointing out here is that even, the Shambler's made a 2v2 map. I've made a 2v2 map. I'm pretty sure BiddyB's got one cooking. BiddyB and Jujic combined to work on a 3v3 map. Shambler's working on a 3v3 map as well. That just needs a lot of tile placements. And I'm wondering, I feel like there's probably one other team map that I'm forgetting. But Jujic also made a 2v2v2v2 map, Team FFA. So we're big fans of that stuff around here. And we've been doing the Protoss in the absence of the tournaments. And so we've had a lot of excuses to play stuff like that. And as we've been playing more team games, we've realized that actually the stability is a lot better than we thought it would be. We've resolved a couple of issues with things like the float precision, causing desyncs most likely. Certainly could have been contributing to the seemingly random stuff that we would get sometimes. We've also very recently, before I actually recorded this podcast, we had some adjustments to some of the internals to fix an issue with initializing certain global variables and stuff. Basically, the TLDR, for those who are not technically minded, is that some issues that might have been player specific based on, like, if your enemy left the game because you beat them and then you had like a Cyclops or a Gladius or something like that firing, there would have been some effect field related stuff that would have started to run for you and then not be properly cleared because you didn't end the game at the same time. That resulted in some issues later on, usually at the very beginning of the game, but I could imagine some situations where maybe it would be an issue later on as well. Either way, though, it has been resolved and rectified. We got to shout out Crankendow Hamster and Neblime for submitting their issues in the past. Of course, many other people have as well, like Top Ramen and the Shambler, so we do appreciate that. We've got a new thread for any sort of sync stability issues that you can go ahead and dump your reports into on the Discord server. We try to be a little bit more organized there. There's been a lot of Discord server updates, actually. We're going to talk about that in the community roundup as well. But again, this team game stuff, it's a natural follow-on from having clans. We would have to guess that, like, HitEmUp and Crankendow or something like that will be a partner, since they're both oopsers, clan oops, right? And then imagine, like, USCM, representing the Shambler and 3Crow or something like that. And then you imagine, Ass would be like Neblime Hamster, or BiddyB would get in on that. I don't know. I'm not sure. We even saw people like DF say that he'd be down to do the team tournament. Like he had the we have the emoji nice cock. Yeah, that's what DF used when hearing about that. So there's people out there who might be more inclined to do the team games. Arbuz Budesh said it himself. He likes the team games more usually, but somehow in Cosmonarchy he enjoys the 1v1 as well, maybe more than he has in other RTS games. So I'm a fan of that. That's pretty cool. And we've actually just had a large number of newcomers come in that they want to learn the game, and it's a little bit easier, perhaps, to play team games than it is to play, 1v1s, maybe a little bit less intimidating somehow. Although, I don't know, you can get ganged up on in team games where you can't do that in 1v1s. It's more of a fair fight in many respects. But, you might be able to, like, maybe run interference for a better player who can then carry based on resources, or maybe you're really good at like turtling to tier 3. Like I'm thinking of, some of the players that we've had in the past from way back, some of those people who have come around and they just mass the Minotaurs out or whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, well, that's a play. You can do that. I imagine that would be the HitEmUp strat. Actually, he loves to do the really super greedy stuff and like really stretch the credulity for what you can actually do. And even back in the day when Mesk was playing more actively, one of the things that I remember out of him in a 3v3 that we played back on Mouth of Bethala, a really old map way back when, he said he was like, what should be my first tech structure? Because he went up to like 3 bases and then put down it was back when we had the Sanctum of Sorrow, which made the Mind Tyrant. Now, obviously, that is from the Prostration stage instead. But, there's all sorts of stuff like that I think is pretty cool. And, just expect stuff like that to continue to be a thing. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty radical that we get to enjoy all sorts of different team compositions and the strategies therein. It's just the couple of team game casts that I've done, the 3v3 on Waterloo, the 2v2 on Amata Samala, a new map that I made. Those games have been really cool to see. So I very much look forward to seeing more activity from there. Of course, Benno was playing in some of those 2v2s, and Arbuz is playing in some of those 2v2s. Love to see stuff like that. So let's just keep on seeing what happens, dude. I'm excited. I'm very excited. And as far as what the tournaments are all about, we're just going to be pulling funding for whenever, like as frequently as we can get the tournaments funded, we can do a weekend 2v2 tournament. It would be pretty similar to the March Invitational in a way, where it would be like I don't know if it would be group style, but it would be kind of like that. Maybe we would just grab, say, 8 players, stuff them together into a bracket of 4 teams. And it would be kind of round robin-y or something, where you would have or maybe it would be like winners and losers bracket, similar to the throne room stage of Acropolis or something like that. We might decide to do something in that method. And then, first place team gets to split the lion's share of the prize money, and second place gets the rest, and the third and fourth place teams just got to try better next time. And that's probably where we would be at. So I don't know about team selection process. I'm tempted to just let anybody sign up with whatever team. I am aware that maybe that would make people feel like, oh no, what if, for example, if Neblime and the Shambler are the best 2 players and they team up for a team and, it's like, oh, they're just farming us like they're the best 2 players. But I think there's enough contenders that, that could be a little bit different. That could be a little bit different. And of course, before our very first 2v2 tournament, we are going to need to, for one, just continue to do stability improvements and stuff, and a lot more testing. And for another, we want to make a little bit more progress on the actual 2v2 map pool, where we've had a lot of new maps from Jujik, some maps from myself, some maps from Shambler, stuff like that. So we need to get I would like at least 7 maps, so that you can have like a best of 5, where each team vetoes 1 map, and then they kind of pick between the remaining 5. That would probably be the ideal situation. So we'll see how that one goes. But I guess at the very least, we could do 5 maps and then just force all of them to be played. Instead of getting a veto, you just pick which one you wanted to start with. And, there'd be the pick ban without the ban part. And that's fine. I think either one is fine. But we'll see how quickly we build up to that funding. The goal is $250, which is a decent amount of money, I won't lie. Some of that will, of course, be towards the prize pool, and others of it will be me taking the day off of work so that I can actually afford to do it, because otherwise, you can't develop Cosmonarchy without the lights on. So there you go. And that is that. That's how we got it. I'm sure that even though that's a pretty high amount of financial resources to distribute, I'm sure that there are going to be people who are interested in chipping in. I'm not asking any one person to do it. Technically, I think we still have enough from the Pickup Partner sponsorship to cover something like that. If I take a look, it looks like, yes, we are actually, we have exactly 250 in the tank there. So I wouldn't do that all at once, but, maybe I could have the Pickup Partner, which is obviously the moving company by Biddy B, moving things from Biddy A to Biddy B of Classic Move. That's Ben's moving company. He's been very gracious with his resources, even donating as an individual after the company. Like, that's really wild. Not as part of the Pickup Partner sponsorship, but still a thing. I don't know. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, with that being said, I feel like, it's just a radical time. Really, really gracious and wonderful and epic of all of the people out there who have contributed some of their hard-earned cash to the efforts. I think HitEmUp and Pr0totype and Lucy and BiddyB might have also all sort of piped up and said, oh, maybe we can contribute to that. I might be wrong about Pr0totype, actually. I think maybe I'm putting words in his mouth and money in his money in my pocket, theoretically, without actually getting his confirmation. But he listens to these. He can decide. Maybe he'll throw in $3 XD. But hey, anything is appreciated. Anything towards the goal, very much appreciated. That's going to be visible on my streams when I'm doing them so that you guys can check them out when we get there. All right, so now that we are done with that, let me just quickly note that obviously one of the things that's been really cool about the influx of people lately is that Iskatumesk has returned as a caster. He's put out his first cast over today, actually. The day of recording is, of course, the 21st of June. And Shadow Fury 333 is also a guy who's been doing some commentary for RTS games, and he joined me for a cast on one of the matches that we played. It was Krankendow versus Jakulansky, the ZVZ on Genesis Y. So he joined me for a nice ZVZ on that. And it was pretty cool. Nice mirror matchup. Kept it somewhat simple. And he was able to sort of get his feet wet with the project in terms of a casting environment and actually getting it set up and seeing stuff. So we solved some technical issues with the setup as well, like background audio and stuff like that when you're panning out of, alt-tabbing out of a CNC draw powered window. And yeah, so basically that plus Neblime working on his beginner stream and occasionally doing some casts himself as he's planned to do for some time is a situation where I absolutely think that we're just going to start popping off a lot more on YouTube and stuff. You know what I mean? I'm really looking forward to that. And as far as I'm concerned, it would be really cool to just see more videos get uploaded and put out there. So big fan, very big fan. Hope you guys are in agreement with me on that front. And Neblime's beginner stream is still looking for replays. Neblime is still looking for replays to cast. He wants about 4 hours of content, give or take. And I think right now he's probably got, I want to say he had 2 sets or 3 sets of replays. He's probably got maybe an hour right now. So still a good amount of ground to cover. So if you are a new player and want to play some PvP matches and then submit them to Neblime, you can certainly do that. If you're more of a mid-table player, I'm thinking like, you know, if Pr0totype regularly beats you, right, that would probably put you at, you know, a decided class 2. I kind of think of Pr0totype as like, he's definitely good enough to occasionally give a scare to the class 1s, right? And, you know, like he might go 3-1 or 3-0, but many of the games are close, and he hangs out with them, but not able to defeat them. But at the same time, he's the kind of guy that gatekeeps you from getting to class 1. You have to be able to defeat him on a regular basis. So pretty cool stuff there. As like nice to have a player like that. In fact, when Dead Infested was playing more often, he was also that kind of player too, and at least as far as I felt when I saw him playing Protoss. So yeah, pretty cool stuff, and definitely something that you guys can check out if you want. Those are 2 names to try to measure yourself up against, I think, if you're a newer player. Although Dead Infested a little bit less, so he hasn't been as active lately, but pretty cool stuff there. Definitely submit replays to Neblime's stream, even if they're like if they haven't been casted on my channel or anybody else's channel, they're definitely safe to submit. I think if they're a little bit on the older side, they still will have some like the relatively amount like reasonable amount of comparison to the current balance and the current game state, so you can probably submit those as well. And if it's been like say 2 weeks since they were cast or something like that, you can maybe safely submit them as well. But we'll try to go for fresh games in more often than not. So I know that Comical Flop and was it Martino Force? I think those were the 2 that I casted. Those were on the newer side. I feel like if those 2 guys gave us another best of 5 or something, that would be pretty sick for getting Neblime some content as well. So that would be another thing to maybe think about. I'll try to send out the bat signal on occasion. I've been noticing who has marked themselves as Noob Monarch in the Discord server. That's another role that we've added so that we can kind of keep track of players that might be really good to get entry-level games from. I know that, Ryan, Concealed Organic, him and I think Myrian have been interested in maybe doing some lower tier 1v1s. So as soon as they have the time to do stuff like that, they would be people to maybe ping. I think his name is Wankman Tendril on Discord and on our server. That's Concealed Organic, and then Myrian is just Myrian. So definitely check that out. We got a couple of other newcomers. I feel like every day we get 2 or 3 new people who at least join the server at minimum, and then some of those people, like I think yesterday we had 2-3 people try to get it installed, and we're also spreading across the international side where we have a couple of new channels on the server that I'll talk a bit more in detail about in the community roundup. But we've got somebody who's offered to translate the server, or the website rather, into Korean. That's Zetsumi, I believe, or Zetsume maybe is the way you pronounce that name. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, awesome, great stuff. Happy to see the project spread across the internet. Very cool stuff there. I put out the word for people in DeWalt server, who's a Russian Protoss player in StarCraft 1, that we have a Russian channel now. And I put out the word in Terror's server, a Peruvian Terran player in StarCraft 1, that we have a Spanish-speaking channel now. So maybe we'll see if people want to check that out. I'm not sure, but we'll see how much more we can do there. Pretty cool stuff. I think we have something like 10 or so people who post in Russian, who speak Russian rather, who are able to communicate that way, and they do end up using that channel quite a bit. So I feel very validated for making that. The Spanish one just came up yesterday, whereas the Russian one's a little bit older. So pretty cool stuff there. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. But let's get into some Askosi design thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. The Askosi are the fourth race impending for Cosmonarchy. Yeah, you thought it was wild that we have 50 units per race. How about a fourth race with 50 more units for you to learn? That's the plan. Yesterday, during my dev stream, I actually came up with I finally fashioned the concept for the Avatar, the first unit capable of hijacking. Hijacking is kind of like a mini cornerstone in the same way that kinetic penetration isn't a cornerstone listed for the Terran regency, or Terran race rather, but it is, by all accounts, one of those kinds of things, right? Like, you look at it and you think, okay, that's like specific to Terran, no other race has it, and it's on a lot of the units. It echoes throughout their design. So yeah, it's definitely kind of like a cornerstone. We just, for style, only put 4 of them down there. Hijacking by the Askosi is this very bizarre genetic process where they use this very crazy gene therapy technology to become whatever they are hijacking. And so it's very very scary, very creepy, very odd. And essentially it's sacrificing the Avatar, in this case is the unit name, but sacrificing a unit that can hijack to become that unit. And I wasn't sure if maybe if that unit dies, you get the unit back. I don't think so. We could try to do something like that. And it might not even be that bad of a call if we do. Because, the odds are, you could then have that unit get executed or whatever, and then you could also execute the unit to get it back or whatever. I don't know if we would want that exactly. I'd have to think a little bit more about the ramifications of such a design decision, but that wasn't initially in scope. It was just an idea that I had. But yeah, that's the first Askosi concept work that has been done in some time. And, now we have a total of 4 units, including the basic worker, that have been conceived, and a total of course, 6 structures that have been conceived. So we're well on our way to getting the 50 unit concepts done, and of course, all of the structures. I think what will end up happening is that I'll try to get some very nice, solid concepts done for tiers 1 and 2. And some nice little epic units, like the Sovereign-esque epic units for the tier 3 area. And then, we'll flesh it out and adapt and adjust the concepts based on what is possible to implement technically. Like maybe we run into something where the attachment system that we were originally using for things like the Akistra core way back and the Sovrolith as well, maybe they still can't be made to work very nicely, which is why we ended up removing them in the first place. And so we come up with a backup plan for hijacking. And then Veek and I have been sort of going back and forth about how we would implement the leaping mechanic that we want for the Proselyte and many other Askosi units, the jumping stuff. And I feel like there's definitely, it feels like there should be ways to make it work nicely, even if we have to convert the unit into an air unit or something. We have the units data entries for that. It's not going to be that impossible. So, excuse me, that's definitely something that I think is worth bringing up. And so there's definitely going to be some adjustments based on that when the rubber hits the road, so to speak, when your concept goes from paper to practice, whatever other idioms you want to use. That's definitely something we'll be doing. But it's very cool to be in that situation. And I think this is the week. This coming week is the week where we finally fix up the initialization issue for the iScript extender branch, and we get ready to go for that. So that'll be very exciting. We've got to do some Git wizardry as well to merge it with the current stuff, but we'll see how it goes. And other than that, very, very cool stuff is ahead. I mean, the Askosi, as their general design, were meant to be these sort of micro-oriented units in the early game, where by themselves, which is kind of funny because it almost invokes an aspect of the Embra seat that I was planning on playing with when we get to the point where we're developing Xibalba regencies. More on those in a coffee question. But the Askosi, who belong to the Embra seat in Xibalba, the Askosi are actually designed within the realm of Cosmonarchy to be this sort of micro-heavy regency, or race, excuse me, where you play as the Askosi and your units by themselves, they won't necessarily be as cost efficient as your opposing units. The most comparable one is probably Terran, because they have like infantry mech and armor, infantry armor and air, like airborne stuff. The Askosi are going to be a little bit different with their design, obviously. But they're the most comparable to the Terrans, probably. And if you imagine like Mavericks, like, yeah, you have to stim them and you want to micro them. That's kind of like, it's a different mechanism by which you micro, but that's kind of like how you get cost efficiency out of bio. Like, they're very nimble. They can go in and out of fights very nicely. They do try to get some sustain off and stuff. So the Askosi units are by large a little bit tankier than Terran bio, but they also don't have access to as ubiquitous healing. Their healing is a little bit more positional based and micro based. And the other stuff that you can get out of them is that, like, their damage potential, sure, they might have more passive tankiness, but it's not by a huge amount, and their damage potential is not entirely gated behind micro, but gated enough behind micro that it will require a little bit of getting used to for that. And so that's the things like jumping between units and being able to do like positional based, cleave attacks or, projectile attacks that do all sorts of wacky stuff. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be stressing is like unit position, that kind of precision with some of the basic stuff, which means that micro heavy players or players who do nicely with precise micro will be able to get a lot out of the Askosi units in the early game, very similar to, again, like Marines or Mavericks in Cosmonarchy, Marines in StarCraft 1, very similar to, drop micro in some ways like the Akantor. Not in the sense that that's the same mechanism, but in the sense that those are like, they have a lot of units that are basically beacons for your attention. And then they have units that if you're trying to go after a composition to attack move with, that might not be as bona fide. That might not be the way that you're ideally going to play the Askosi. I think the Askosi are a race that are going to be best defined with harassment type attacks as opposed to frontal ones, especially in the early stages of the game. And your harassment attacks, your scouting moves, your bobs and weaves, your kiting, all of these little micro tricks that you're going to be doing are basically supposed to give you the upper hand because you wouldn't necessarily be able to win in a fair fight, especially with biotic units. I think you go enough into the mechanized branch, that's when you can start to get into the full frontal attacks, but those are a little bit harder to get to, harder to tech into and stuff, and harder to afford and sustain. So those are the kinds of things that you can look forward to out of the Askosi is getting your cost efficiency out of precise micro and unit movement, and getting your frontal attacks out of more expensive stuff later on. Whereas if you want to, there's probably an analogy you can take or make to like assassins in a MOBA context where you kind of want to like poke and prod and see, play around the extremities. And then like when you sense you have that killer instinct developed and you understand that they might be weak, you dive in, you all in, you go right into there. And by all in, I don't necessarily mean in the RTS context. I'm more so thinking about you commit to the attack, you send your forces through, point of no return, you don't bother retreating until the job is done. And the job in this case might be destroying a natural or sniping an army or something like that. And so that's the kind of pattern I'd like to see out of the Askosi. We'll see if it's as satisfying as I'm thinking it will be. But we're going to give you a lot of different ways to play the Askosi through harassment and scouting and intelligence gathering and sort of keeping watch on your opponent's armies and making sure that you can be on the lookout for constant little ways to exploit things. Like, I think a player like Hamster would be really good at this race because when you think about it, like Hamster had that tactic with dropping the pylon and then one legionnaire and then tagging the pylon and using it as a waygate elevator for all of his other legionnaires. That's actually like the Askosi, dude. That's like you drop a unit on the high ground and the other Askosi units jump to it. Now, not all of them can jump, but that's one of the things that you can imagine doing. And so I think it's really cool to imagine stuff like that. And I'm definitely pumped to see them in action when we get to that point. But finishing up some of the iScript related stuff, getting to the point where we can develop and add in the Askosi units. The first couple of Askosi units are very, very exciting as a sort of milestone to hit, right? And then, of course, on the the other thing that the iScript extender is immediately going to be used for is like more visual reads for overlays and effects and more work work on the Protoss, where they have a couple of units that are still outstanding that need to be added in. So definitely check that out when we get to that point. We got at least 3 Protoss robotic units that need to be added, and then some stuff that needs to be shuffled around. As well as, of course, the Enozlliks, which is going to basically be a structure that recalls, that does dimensional recall like the Didact. I hope people proxy it. That's all I can say about that. All right, that's GG on the subject of the core aspects of this whole event, this whole podcast. We've managed to get to the point where we're talking about, we've covered the team games, we've covered the casters and Neblime's beginner stream, and we've covered some of the Askosi. So I think it's high time we get into the community roundup. So as is customary around these parts, when we do the community roundup, we talk about maps, and maps are very cool. This is Amada, a map that I myself made. It's a 2v2 map. You'll see you spawn in the bottom left as a team or the bottom right as a team, and the other bases over here are in various states of interest. Obviously, we've got your red natural and blue natural. But you can also choose as red to go for this base right over here, which would leave this base as a secondary base for blue. Now, that's a very interesting dynamic that is going to require some team cohesion, and probably the part of the layout that I'm the least confident in, I guess. I could imagine a world where we just expand the map to the south a little bit to add a third base for blue that's a bit more dedicated, and then we can say that this is for sure red's natural. Maybe I'll end up doing that at some point. Might even add additional gameplay to the south section over here. Could even have like an island base in the middle over here if I did that, which could be an interesting point of contention for air-related stuff, drops, etc. I do like the visual of seeing the players expand northwards, and I do think that ends up looking very, very interesting. And also, it just puts you in a very different, ground territory. Something that Krankendow and I were talking about is the center of the map. Originally, these ramps to the left and to the right that are sort of like these connected ramps, right? The omni ramps, if you will. Those ramps were a lot smaller, and that meant that if you were going to come at it from that angle, it was a little bit harder to actually attack into that position. So whoever gets there first kind of stood the test and, stood their ground and just won. That was at least what Crank was thinking. We only played a couple of games on it, so it's not really 100% sure. But I don't think there's any problem with making this a little bit more permissive. The other thing I was kind of thinking about is maybe I'll widen this by one extra tile. So pull this cliff out one extra tile, and we'll see how that one goes. But that is that for Amada Samala. Very interesting map. Yes, it's a reference to Deputy Dad, and that is all that I will say about that. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these in any given order. There's some maps that I'm going to show here that are newer than Amada Samala, and some maps that are older than Amada Samala in terms of when they were posted. I have not sorted it by date, so just keep that in mind. This is a mock-up of Zone Control. This is by Biddy B. He's working on a map for Zone Control, a UMS map. We will have a couple of those mixed in here. Nothing to say about the actual map working yet, because I don't know its state of completion, but I just wanted to point that out that our UMS stuff is on the way. Up next, we have a map that I was able to port as part of what HitEmUp requested for his monthly map crap. This is where you can request a video or a map to be made once a month if you're at that tier of donation. It's $69 a month, a classic move. And 3Crow asked for a different map that's in this list that we'll get to. This one was originally Requiem, a map that was by Rose of Dream and Dream somebody. I can't remember the other username, unfortunately, off the top of my head, but it's in the map description as they were the original authors. I have come in here and I have made it so that it's CMified. I have made the ramps use the north-facing ramps instead, made some of those XY symmetrical rotational symmetry a little bit more manual. It was originally done very much obviously by hand. And the key detail for this map you'll notice is that the naturals are on the high ground for one, and the naturals have this opportunity for, once you deplete them, you can go into the back area, right? So that's kind of interesting. You can go in there by land. Because the paths are so isolated, you're not going to get into too many pathing troubles where you right-click and your units tiz them out. So I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know how it plays. Apparently HitEmUp has played a bunch of games on it with other people. Maybe the Shambler was one of them. I'm not 100% sure. I know Shambler had some words to say about the layout, and he also wanted to edit the layout at some point. So maybe there'll be a V Shambler version from the Shambler on this map at some point in the future. But yeah, pretty neat. Obviously, you got the little cross in the middle, and this map is actually called Leviathan's Lair because HitEmUp is also known as Leviathan. So check that out. This is a map, oh man, it's Sub-Zero Station, I think is the name of the map. I'm actually blanking on the name. I know Sub-Zero is a part of it. This is a map by BDB and Jujik, so both of them have combined and joined forces to make a 3-on-3 map. I believe this is the most recent version, but I could be incorrect about that. I think there were some updates after it was played during a Pr0totype. So the spawns are in the top left here, where you got red, blue, and teal. And then if I unzoom and go back over here, these are the counter spawns. So bottom right, you got purple, orange, brown. So those are your sort of orders of operations, so to speak. You've got like a natural over here, a natural and third over here, and of course down here you just have a natural. So kind of an interesting combination of things that you can do in that front. Holding the ramps was very difficult in my experience. This little ice base over here is actually not pathable. There's no ramp into it. So it's purely it's a safe base in theory, but like drops and stuff can definitely impact it. And I'm sure that you could probably find some spots to park siege tanks. Phalanx's artillery in general can probably hit that from various ways. That requires a bit of an investment. You're on open ground, you could get flanked. So kind of interesting stuff. This is all buildable terrain in the bottom. Ice is buildable in Cosmonarchy, so the light blue tile here is all buildable. One thing that was requested at one point by BDB was that I try to make coastal, basically flooded ice, but like walkable, shallow water ice. That's not really my neck of the woods or my cup of tea, as far as I don't really necessarily know how to make those kinds of things. I know I could probably do the center tiles pretty easily, but I don't know about doing the cliff pattern or whatever. So that's something I'm probably going to have to do some reverse engineering in a broad sense, not in a code sense, about how did Blizzard make those tiles? How did DF, Dark & Fantasies, make those tiles in the past? And maybe I can see about coming up with some sort of solution there. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one, but it'll be interesting to check that out. And hey, if I'm able to do it for this tile set, maybe I can go back and update the coastal basilica that I made a while back for the Twilight tile set, to actually have the water at the appropriate height level so that it doesn't look like it's just kind of floating there. So that would be very nice. It could turn it into a proper coastal cliff then. But anyway, that is all I have to say about that. Interesting map. I think you can get some interesting macro games on it, but I do think it's probably a little bit too hard to defend the early bases. In fact, maybe there's a weird thing to say. I don't think it would work for this exact layout, but the map would probably be a bit more defensible if you started on the low ground here, and then you had the high ground as bases you could immediately expand to on a more defensive front. And then you were choosing between expanding safely but behind you and forward, which would be more risky, but give you more momentum and more map tempo and stuff. So it might be something to chew on for a future layout. Again, I don't know that it would ever work out here, but hey, it's another team map. We need more team maps. I do appreciate it. Let's go to the next one. This is Old Scars by Jujik. It's a 1v1 map to spawn. We've got bottom left and top right as the spawns, and it makes use of these very interesting tiles here. I was able to kit bash, similar to what I did for Oblivion with the desert tile set. I was able to kit bash a not so pretty, but still, it functions, ramp for this tile type. So this is the sunken ground tile type. And I also was able to add things like a dirt blend, which you can very narrowly see underneath the town center markers. And I was also able to add, flagstones and a couple of doodads, like for the these doodads here that were ported in. So yes, indeed, even the penis. Actually, that's not the penis. That's like a demented penis. I don't remember where the penis is. Here's the penis. So I don't know why they make penises, but Blizzard is just a company of penises, so I guess that kind of make sense. But I was able to port those doodads to this tile type as well. So looking pretty good. I haven't confirmed. I think I did the doodads correctly, because these are a lower height level. Similar to the ice, actually, in the previous map, which I closed the image for. Otherwise, I would tab back in. But that light blue tile in the previous map, Sub-Zero Station, is a situation where when you go down it, you actually do lose out on a height advantage, right? You actually have a height disadvantage down there. So it has the, a vision blocker, and it has the cliff advantage when you're standing on top of, above that, right? So, these do function as ramps. Like, the reason I'm saying this is because in StarCraft 1, by default, this tile type is the same thing as like the dirt and crushed rock around it. So there is no height difference. If you were to try to do something like this in StarCraft 1, you wouldn't have a height difference. In Cosmonarchy, there is a height difference. So you are technically on not really high ground, it's actually low ground internally, but then there's lower ground. So that's the situation you find yourself in here. But hey, a pretty cool layout overall, and not just because of the novelty factor. You have this natural that's pretty easy to wall, and then the third is very open from many sides, but very close to move to, which is kind of something that we don't really see played around with too often, actually. Like, the travel distance on this third is very minuscule, but it's actually very difficult to hold, I think, without taking more map control. So you almost wouldn't want to necessarily take this as your third. You might want to go up here, take this, hold this low ground path over here, and then have this as your easy fourth. So it's a little deceptive, but I'm sure people can come up with solutions to it, and maybe there'll be some adjustments to this layout. But I actually think, and this is the first time I've said this off the cuff out of a Jujic map. We've got more Jujic maps to look at later, or at least one more. This might actually be a map I could consider adding to the Empire class. Like, just based on the looks, I'd have to see games on it. But it looks like it's well considered in terms of the layout. And it really, I think, layout-wise, it represents an interesting sort of adjustment and etc. Out of Jujic as a map maker, right? I will note that there are some busted tiles over here with these doodads. So you didn't escape. You did not escape this time. This is In Twain, a map by myself. Obviously, the decor is very lacking by comparison to some of the other maps that we've seen. This is a 3-spawn map. This was requested by 3Crow. It was his monthly map crap. He requested a map that was, conceptually, it was supposed to basically be a decider, and it would have the Cosmonarchy crown logo on it, which is what you see underneath here. So I added that to the tile set. And, did some tomfoolery with that. But In Twain is it's a 3-spawn map. It's one of the few 3-spawn maps we have in the game at all. I think the only other one that we have is Excelsior, another map I made way back when. This is, in some ways, not really a successor to it, because it's a very different map, but has similar ideas to it, right? The rocky ground obviously is unbuildable out here in the left and right, and also a little bit in the middle. We've got this very interestingly designed, in my opinion, the very bizarre-looking mound over here. It's an Omni ramp. We've got, like, pseudo-Omni ramps here. It's not exactly Omni, but it's pretty close. And, of course, we have these mineral fields that you can mine out to unlock new bases. So if you're the top spawn, you unlock your natural, you choose which angle to go in, and you're going to want to scout where your opponent actually is. You have a chance to spawn horizontal on the south, in which case you can choose to take a low ground natural or this natural in the same height level, but you need to get your mineral field out. I did test the pathing, and for the most part, the only way that you would bug out your units is if your units were already over here in the mineral fields to begin with. So that does mean that you will have, if you're responding to like an air raid or something and you haven't mined out the minerals, which you probably should do anyway just to access that base, but if you haven't done it yet, you will need to sort of escort baby your units out a little bit from the ramp and then like shift click them or whatever. But besides that, it's significantly improved from the first version, which I believe Neblime and Arbuz played. So shout out to them for the feedback. And aside from that, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I actually don't know about, like, should these ramps, for example, even be here, because there's already 2 ramps here into the top spawn. I was thinking that maybe these ramps shouldn't be here, but you might still want to be wary of unlocking this for the purposes of drops, if drops come in there, right, that your base could be kind of vulnerable there. There not being a ramp there could actually be pretty significant, so I don't know that I would want to get rid of that. But hey, it's an idea. We'll continue to see if this map gets, more games on. I'll be interested in seeing it. But that's In Twain, 1v1 Uprising, for those interested in playing it. Old Scars also 1v1 Uprising. Some of the UMS maps, like Zone Control, is not actually available yet. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones. Sub-Zero Station is on 3v3. I haven't done the class system for 3v3 maps. I have done 2v2 class systems, so Amada Samala is available in the Uprising folder. And that's it so far. Moving on to Fields of Cernunnos. Very interesting name. Obviously, I think it's Cernunnos. It might be Chair or Care or something like that. I think it's an Irish name anyway, so it's probably Care Nunos or something like that. But anyway, maybe it's Norse, in which case, who knows. This is a map by the Shambler. You have spawns in your left and right on the temple ground here. This map, I'm not 100% sure about this map. I think this might not even be the most up-to-date version of it, but this might have been the one that was selected by the Shambler for the final frontier, so to speak. You've got your natural, you've got your neutral nexus over here, which allows you to kind of distance mine before your natural is set up, which is kind of funny, but also acts as a helpful little pseudo wall. So you can put down 2 stockades, you can put down a gateway, etc., and that will sort of immediately wall it off. So kind of interesting, kind of neat. The other thing that's worth noting about this is that there are these crucibles over here in the Kagra-filled raised jungle. Terrans might lift off star pads and move them over there. So that already feels really weird and non-standard, like those 2 factors. But then you think about the ramp over here that's blocked by an Atlas or whatever that structure actually is. I think the Atlas is the only one that uses that graphic internally. You got to remember that SCM draft. The reason why we see the old robotics support bay graphic here is because the Crucible graphic wasn't added into the SCM draft profile because it's an extended image, and extended extended, data entries are not allowed in SEM draft because we don't have source code because XD. So, there's not really a good reason why we don't have source code. It's just this, the developer decided not to. I think there's some interesting details about the rest of the map, but it does feel very experimental. I don't know how many more games have been played on it. I know Shambler, when he was actively working on the map, field tested many different iterations. So, we'll just have to wait and see. I think maybe the issue that I would have with the atlases is that if you right-click the wrong way, your units will spin a lot. But maybe that's not that big of a deal. I guess I'd have to see the map played and probably play on it myself. This is also, I think this is in 1v1 Uprising. I'm pretty sure it is. But if it's not, I'll fix that a little bit later after this recording. So definitely check it out there if you're interested. It's a bit of a wacky one. But we've seen people I know Smarty Cake spectated a bunch of games on it and stuff. So there you go there. Shout out to Smarty Cakes, by the way. That's hot. Area 52 is a 2v2 map by, Team FFA map by Jujic. We actually looked at this a while ago. Just wanted to remind people that it exists. This one, and there's another map here that we looked at a while ago by Jujic called Thalas's Claim. This is a 1v1 map. We apparently had some busted tiles that I did not yell at Jujic for, and so he was like, oh, thankfully I've managed to escape the wrath. Well, unfortunately, Old Scars did not escape that one, so I still got you. But hey, just a reminder, these maps are also available for playing. And, I think this Team FFA one is pretty good. I haven't seen any games on it yet, but just looking at the structure, it should be pretty interesting. You have the Crucible, I think, in the middle. This is really, really cheeky, by the way, if this is a Crucible, because just imagine the kinds of things that you can do with a Crucible in the early game. You start powering up your stockades or star pads or whatever silly cheese you're doing, and then, it could just get very, very silly. Over here, we have the, spot for many gases, and, of course, you've got the natural third. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how the bases would go out, but it's interesting. I like the idea of the map, and it's cool to have more 2v2s or Team FFAs rather. So cool stuff there. And again, shout out to that as well as Thalas's Claim. This is an update to Germination version 2.1, I believe, is what we're at now for Germination. This is a map, of course, by BiddyB famously. This map is you can notice that the middle of the map has been converted into low ground. Very interesting, using an Omni ramp out of the sandy sunken pit ramp that I had made some time ago. Very cool that he was able to make use of that. I have since updated some this is the active version. I added some tiles for the jungle cliff blend or whatever for dirt, so I was able to kind of clean up some of the transitions, but it's still a little bit janky. Obviously there's some other things like I really don't like this very long straight line. It doesn't look very good in my opinion, and feels very jank overall, but this is what has become of the airbase. It's now an island. Pretty interesting stuff. You still have this weird compact nature of like 4 bases you can take very fast. Not very much build space, mind you, now. It does feel like a lot of the build space has shrunken on this version of the map. And so that probably gives you more value to taking the top right or the bottom left, depending on your spawn. I still feel like there's probably too many bases going on in this section over here. I feel like where I'm sort of hovering and circling my mouse, there's 3 bases in that sort of area, 2 on the low ground, 1 on the high ground. It feels like maybe there should only be 2 bases there, and maybe like specifically this one over here could probably be removed and opened up to be a bit more on the side of like build space or something for extra stuff. Not 100% sure on that one. I think you would still want to adjust the placement of some of this stuff, and that can be very painful because a lot of it is manually placed. But I could see a world where you kind of like shift this space up, remove this one, shift the space down, remove this one, and then you've got better spacing going on there. Might be something for BiddyB to think about, but of course a painful thought to think, because obviously that would mean a lot of work. But anyway, if people are interested in that, I will go ahead and put it up on the Uprising folder for 1v1 if people want to play some games on it, and I'm sure BiddyB will be I'm not sure he'll be updating it. He might, but if he does, obviously those updates will eventually make their way over there as well. The Shambler has a 4-spawn map for us, a 4-spawn variant of Cocytus. This one is called Helheim. Cocytus, a nice map that he made some time ago. It was bottom spawns, and the general layout of the main natural third is preserved, as well as the attack path over here in the middle. But everything else is pretty new. Obviously, the fact that it's 4-way mirrored up top left and top right, and of course the fact that we've got these very interesting side bases. This is actually a fairly low econ map, right? There's 14 bases in this map. There's 3 for each player spawn, and then there's the 2 side ones. But the side bases are kind of like 1 mineral base, but 3 gas bases effectively, because there's 4 geysers, and you think about gas and ridge usually. So yeah, pretty interesting just based on that alone. I think you could get into some very neat situations on this map. I feel like It reminds me of Retro, a StarCraft 1 Badlands map, where the base count is pretty low. And the reason why it reminds me of that is because when I look at Retro, I feel like something is missing. But the fact that that feeling is a thing, actually, like the reason why I feel like something is missing is because there's not very many bases and stuff. And that actually lends to some interesting situations you don't normally get. So I don't hate Retro. I think it's definitely a difference. It's definitely a different look. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening, if anything, on Helheim. Definitely check this map out also in 1v1 Uprising. We got so many maps in 1v1 Uprising, guys, just so you know. Moving on, we've got a 2v2 map here by the Shambler called Ironforge, a very plain name in many respects. And of course, it's a platform map. A lot of unbuildable terrain with the solar arrays here in the black tile in the sort of corners, and of course in the middle as well. Nice use of Rusty Pit in the very middle and some of the other general surrounding areas. That's pretty cool. A nice little visual accent. I feel like the platform tile set looks pretty nice by itself. You don't usually have to do a crazy amount of work unless you're doing something high concept. Now, this area over here is very interesting with the choke. I love the design of this. And I also think that the fact that you've got this shared natural setup over here is really, really neat. Definitely something to watch out for. Might be something that we end up doing a bit more often. And also, again, I mean, this map might take the idea that I was talking about for Sub-Zero a little bit too much, where you only really expand away from your opponent. Like this base down here is very limited, but I guess it has neutral treasuries, so you could try to take it early. And this base over here, yeah, it's got some higher resource counts than normal and the double gas, but still a little bit odd because it's so far away. And it looks like we've got some neutral geysers here that you'd probably want to use air workers for or something, or you could put down treasuries if you're a Terran player and let your ally mine from it, sort of like the tutorial, in fact, in terms of the treasury placement. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not going to say I don't like it or anything. I do feel like it has that idea of expanding away from your opponent, and maybe it's doing that a little bit too much based on what I'm seeing right now, where most of the bases are further away from your opponent. But still an interesting idea because the mains are so close together. I feel like airplay is probably a foregone conclusion. Like if you have Protoss, you're going to go for lattices. If you have Zerg, you might go for a fast Nathrok, like the fast Nathrocores and stuff out of the Vornath. And then if you're Terran, obviously Wraiths. So I do think that you're going to see a lot of preemptive air defense, but I mean, the bases are close together, so it's easy to scout. But the choke design is such that it's actually very interesting. It'll be difficult to breach that position, and the other pathways are so long. I feel like this is a layout that is very nicely well considered by the Shambler, so hats off to him there. This guy, I could easily see this being a map that gets played a lot in 2v2s, so definitely send me some games to cast on it, you know what I'm saying? This is another Shambler map. It's very much in progress, so the tiles are not all there, but it's called Chains of Shambhala. I think this is the most up-to-date screenshot I have of it. Many tiles that need to be placed still, but it is an interesting setup. I guess it's kind of like Mouth of Bathala, Chains of Shambhala. I'm not sure. Obviously, Shambhala just... I don't know, Shambler by any other name. Maybe it's an actual thing, not sure. We got a double gas island base up here in the top left with very few minerals. That's kind of an interesting choice. The 3 mains, the 3 naturals. The naturals may be a little bit far away, honestly. I'm not 100% sure about that. And then aside from that, I don't know. This one's fairly plain, but you can see how you might expand out here to these center bases here as the middle spawn, obviously to the right as the red players, or the left as the teal player, that sort of thing. So like each player kind of has their own growth direction, and it's kind of independent of each other. But it seems like there should be enough pathways to kind of navigate around. And hopefully this is a map that you can kind of be somewhat defensive on. A little bit at the early stages of the game, because focused aggression from multiple players into one spot is always usually the name of the game as a strategy for team games. You can try to split your focus. I have done that before, but usually a concerted effort by the other team will end up trumping that. So you do have to watch out for that. And so that's something that we should keep tabs on. But anyway, an interesting map. We'll check in on it. It's not available yet for testing because I don't... I mean, you can ask Shambler if you want to play on it in this incomplete state. I don't put incomplete maps in terms of tiles on the actual repository because that's a distribution to everybody. So that would be like me having an incomplete map that I put up there. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Nice to see that. And we're closing things out with a couple of UMS maps that's worth pointing out. We have Evolves, this one by Pr0totype. Pretty standard stuff. You got the 2 anchors. When you lose the anchors, you lose the game. And you have units spawning in, and you have really massive numbers of units, and it just kind of evolves all the way up until you have a ridiculous number of whatever those units are, and you got the mass attack over here in the top left, which will eventually be buttons when Vika is able to hook that up without breaking CNC draw, which is a weird conflict that we had when we first tried to involve and invoke buttons. But yeah, cool stuff there. And then Laser Tag by Luciferius, his first contribution to Cosmonarchy maps. Very cool stuff. Obviously, this is Eidolons, you know, snipers and stuff. Very cool stuff to see. And he also said that maybe there would be some stuff that he could use for laser tag. Like I was postulating that the Matrix could get detection, and he's like, "Oh, I could use that in laser tag." It's kind of funny to think about that. But yeah, anyway, cool stuff, cool map, cool looking map. Anyway, I imagine this is fun to play with the homies. Maybe we'll catch some on Pr0totype. This is coming out on Pr0totype on Saturday. Saturdays are Pr0totypes, by the way, guys. So definitely stay tuned for that. And yeah. That's pretty much it for the community roundup as far as the maps go. Now we can get back to talking about all of the other stuff related to the community roundup. I'm going to have to make separate sections for the community roundup, such is its impressive girth. Well, this is going to be a bit of a laundry list of names, but I'm going to go through the people who have been actively playing Cosmonarchy and are relatively new since the last episode of the podcast. So we're kind of going back about 3 weeks here, or 18 days, so not quite 3 full weeks. But we do have Sabby, a friend of Neblime, who's immediately joined Clan Ass. Classic move. Apparently a Protoss player, or at least when I pinged everybody to indicate that we had a new thread for talking about future changes, he was like, "Where's the Uptecton buffs? We need Uptecton buffs." And so I mean, hey, I did buff them, but I was surprised to see him type that, because for some reason, if you're friends of Neblime, I don't immediately associate you as a Protoss player. Don't know why. Not 100% sure. We did have a couple of people who haven't exactly said too many things in the actual server, but they are of Korean nationality as far as I can tell. So that's very cool, because as we get more Korean players and representation, we're going to try to design, you know, a spot where we can have like, you know, a Korean moderator and stuff, and then have a Korean channel. We'll talk a little bit more about that very soon. We had a guy whose username is Zealot, but his display name and picture are Zergling. I don't know what to think of that. That's a crazy type of person. But he joined a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, actually. And then, of course, Shadow Fury joined us 2 weeks ago. A shout out to him. Again, he joined me for a cast. Send your replays in the new replay submission thread on Discord so that you can enjoy some very, very lovely things, such as potentially Dominic casting your games. Shout out to him. A couple other people who are worth noting. Chris Rar joined. He's been playing a little bit and posting a little bit. We had I don't know how to say his actual display name. It looks like Naya. But it's Shopkeeper Dog, and it's a Snoopy artwork for a portrait. Cool stuff. Another Korean guy. Not Shopkeeper Dog. He might be Korean. I don't know. But there's another Korean guy that also joined. But Shopkeeper Dog has been active in some of the discussions. Pretty cool to see him in there. Nice stuff there. I know Agokate was typing a little bit somewhat recently. Got him set up. He's on Linux, one of our few Linux players. So shout out to him. And shout out to Airstrike Ivanov, I guess. Airstrike Ivanov. He's been helping people set it up on. I think he has like a Lutra script and stuff for setting up the project. So very, very cool of him. Very nice. A couple other people have indeed popped in, though. Of course, we welcome back Iskatumesk. We have Isagiro, at least that's how I'm pronouncing it, but it might be like Isagiro. I'm not 100% sure. He has joined us as one of our native Russian speakers, and also as a player who is mostly a StarCraft 2 player, but he comes into this game and he's really enjoying it, and he keeps playing and he keeps gaming and he keeps losing to people who are more experienced than him, and he's like, WTF, I thought I would win. It's kind of funny. I say it in good nature. I'm a fan of him. I expect to see some very nice games out of him. We have Zetsume. I mentioned them as a potential translator in the future. Very cool stuff. And then we have a couple other people who joined very, very recently. Genie, a.k.a. Warm54, has been setting up. They hail from the Ukraine, as far as I understand, and they have set up their game after some silly shenanigans with one of their... It was just another antivirus program that was not acting up. Actually, Dominic had a similar problem. Funnily enough, Shadow Fury had a similar problem with Bitdefender. But this one, I don't even remember the name, but apparently it's something you don't even want to have installed because it's not actually good for your system. Anyway, we got him wrangled and figured out, and so now he's been playing and gaming and enjoying. We have Myriad Colors, who's another new recent convert. We have Klismic, a.k.a. Andrew Smith, on the YouTube channel. Shout out to him. He's a cool guy. Hope I'm not doxing him, but he listens to the streams and stuff. stuff and types, and he's gotten set up, and he's just about ready to play some new games. Very cool stuff. And last, of course, we welcome Vladio, who is a guy who has apparently been doing some development and getting some work done on his own games, and so he comes to join us for some of his own stuff as well as some of our stuff. So cool to have another dev in the circle. Always nice to sort of rope in some like-minded individuals. On the Discord community side, as far as like not just welcoming new people to that, but also talking a little bit about some of the things that have happened on the server. We have retired the forum that was mostly just used to house considering future changes as a forum thread. That's been retired and moved away. And now instead, we have just a more generic text thread, like a chat channel thread, based off of CM Talk, the more general talk channel. And the thread there is popping off. People are definitely using it a lot more than the forum one, so that's already been a success. I think most people probably couldn't see that it was a thread at all because visibility for threads is a little bit jank. I would like to imagine that Discord will improve that in the future, but Discord improves something? I don't know about that. We have a new thread, like I mentioned, for harvesting desync errors and also for submitting match replays, retiring the casual ladder thread from a ways back. We have international channels for Russian speakers and Spanish speakers and maybe soon Korean speakers. Love that. Love me some Hangul. And yeah, that's been the main changes so far on the Discord server side. We do have, I'm tagging all of our developers with dev. That's Jesse, Veek7, DF, and myself right now. Maybe some other people later on, so that it's more immediately obvious to new players and newcomers in general who we are and what we're doing. We want to keep the character of things like having not a fraud and dad father and other weird roles, as well as, of course, having like the funny names for Manifestod instead of Manifesto, and Stellar Icon is like more of a, not really a funny name, but it's a cool name for the general discussion and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we're allowing that sort of thing overall, and making sure that we can keep that character associated with us. We don't want to normify it too much, but making it a little bit less dense in some other ways seems fine. It'll make it easier for people to figure out what's going on. So happy about that. Now let's get into some of the other things that we have to do that are, of course, related to our epic community, and that is not anything other than the coffee questions. So if you want to support the efforts of the No Frauds Club, of myself and Veek7, you can donate to Pr0totype and Veek7 on coffee.com. Link is in the description and now visible in the bottom left. We have this little bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it a sponsored segment, but it's at the very least a segment sponsored by, brought to you by all of our coffee donators. In fact, pretty much all this content is brought to you guys by them in some way, shape, or form, influenced by the money that is being peddled through the streets right now. Appreciate all you guys joining up. Of course, our latest supporter is Enozlliks, and he has a new question here. He'll be the one to close us out in this section. But first, let's talk a little bit about those pesky Xibalba regencies. We've got a question from Myrian to kick things off here, and he asks about Ansifii and Embra in Krysilliant, using an example from campaign planning for the Sycoran campaign. In a hypothetical scenario, an Ansifii or Embra force equal to or less than the Santis Sons and Daybreak Guild, specifically due to the fact that the factions are the only yardstick I have to determine the amount of losses such forces can take before capitulation. This kind of force arrives in the outskirts of Krysilliant. How do things proceed? How do the parties react to each other? So as far as I can tell, this is kind of asking about, like, what is the relative strength about, say, the mercenary fleet of the Santis Sons and the Daybreak Guild sort of combined, right? Which is an Embra organization. What are their combined strengths, and what might happen between them and some of the Krysilliant races, right? The Cosmonarchy races. So obviously the Askosi would be very confused because there's Askosi as part of Embra. So that's like them in the future joined forces with this other collective. And also the mercenary fleet of the Ansifii would be a bit more, not necessarily monolithic, but it wouldn't be as hodgepodge as the Embra forces tend to be. So when you're looking at the Ansifii and you're like, oh, they've got all this stuff, like, that's crazy. That would be more like, goddamn, In fact, remember, if people remember something that I mentioned a while ago, is that the work that I have done on the sort of world building internally, it says that the Terrans on their first contact with the Askosi thought that they were another Terran nation with, just their own sort of designs for ships. Like maybe the Imperium might have thought, oh wait, is that like some new futurist Federation stuff, or Golden Republic tech or something with a new different coat of paint? What's going on over here? And then they realized, oh no, they're just not even Terrans at all. And so that was a very interesting first contact scenario. And part of me almost wants to make stuff like that in a campaign, but also part of me recognizes that maybe it's better to have like more standard interactions. And so you can imagine like a first contact scenario then in a lot more detail if you know what the standard interactions are by comparison, right? Anyway, that is something that is worth pointing out. And so, yeah, what do these Ansifii fleets look like? People would probably think, oh, that's a Terran force, right? That's another Terran, organization or something. And yet, eventually, it would be very obvious that the materials, the material scans would be different because they use like different materials to create their vessels and stuff. The construction would be very different, upon closer inspection. You just kind of see like kinetic dark metal, and you think, oh, Terran, right? Like if you're in the Krysilliant sector, and then the Askosi come in and they have like different highlights, and that kind of helps you signify which ones are which. And then if the Ansifii showed up too, though, then it's like, oh man, what the hell? We got to start really thinking about this. Who are these people? So I think the first thing that would happen is the Askosi would make contact with the Askosi within the Embra seat. The Terrans would definitely be interested in talking with both the Embra seat and the Ansifii and trying to negotiate. Like the Ansifii's power level is really high compared to Terrans, so you're talking about a very, very different look in terms of the kinetic power, even their physical power. Like Ansifii are stronger than humans, right? So by a considerable degree, like Ansifii can go toe to toe with Keltar and Githrovan warriors on a physical. You strip away the armor, they can go toe to toe with those guys. That would be like a human being able to like box a Protoss zealot or something, again, without the armor. That's very unlikely. It just never happens. You need the power armor to compete with them in terms of form. So the same is absolutely true. Like I would imagine physically that Ansifii would be a bit more imposing than the Protoss, but the power armor makes a big difference, right? So, the Protoss wouldn't be too super outgunned until like the tier 2 stuff rolled in for the Ansifii, whereas I think the Ansifii would the problem is that the Protoss would be at a disadvantage in tier 1, if you want to use those terms, versus Ansifii by a considerable degree, but the unit counts would be like Terran unit counts, even though the unit strength would be like Protoss units. And that's basically how the comparison would work. So the Protoss would be at a disadvantage because units of comparable power to their own gateway units, for example, would be being fielded based on the numbers that you would normally see out of like stockade spam from the Terran bio players or whatever. So to give you a little bit more info and insight in there. So if this sort of thing happened, to more directly answer Myrian's question, I think the Zerg would be very interested in assimilating, in gathering data, in attacking and testing their ability. The Zerg wouldn't really be worried about extermination, because even though this is that's the other thing to point out, since the scale of the operation is yes, it's a mercenary fleet, yes, it's very powerful and large and expansive, and it has access to all of the Ansifii tech, and the same is true for the Daybreak Guild, where they don't have access to everything. Like they don't really have that much Dateron representation, but they would still have a lot of the Askosi, obviously Retons and Otini. They'd have plenty of the they would definitely have a lot of the more rank and file sort of member nations out there, right? If you look at the Embra Seat stuff. So those are the things that come to mind, is like they would have the scale of operation. The Embra Seat would have the scale of operation to at least gather intel. So if they had to go hot, and they definitely would go hot in certain situations, like versus Zerg, you'd see the Embra Seat gathering intel with their robots, their automata, and you'd see the Ansifii standing by to commence bombing runs and incinerate planets and stuff like that if they needed to. And so that would be like kind of the scale of the operation, but they wouldn't be able to. I think the biggest thing that they would feel a bit difficult about is, and something that you can kind of think about is, even if we transposed an entire regency of, say, Ansifii or Githrovan or whatever, like an entire nation or empire of the Makrodas or whatever, like their technology would be inferior eventually because they'd run out of the munitions and maybe eventually they'd end up losing some of their structures, and then they'd be rebuilding them with materials that are inferior to magmite and hypervials, right? Vespene gas and minerals would need to have like their whole infrastructure would need to be adjusted to incorporate those, and those are not as powerful of a distillation of resource and material to create the same level of technology would not be possible anymore. So their designs would change and their capabilities would definitely go down. So I think eventually they would probably regress to the mean of like, oh yeah, we lost all of our really epic tech that was made with old universe technology, old universe materials. We have to use this stuff instead, and it's just not as good. That would definitely happen, and so the crossover could actually be a bit more balanced, actually, eventually. But until then, yeah, the Ansifii fleet would be able to run through. Like, I don't think they'd be able to bring down the Imperium, but they could probably get rid of. They could probably take over a couple of star systems just by themselves, forgetting the Embra seat for a moment. The Daybreak Guild, they themselves would probably be capable of doing something like that. They'd struggle more than the Ansifii because they don't have access to the Dateran and stuff, but they would definitely have a lot of power there. And so, yeah, it depends. Like, they probably wouldn't want to go Scorched Earth because they wouldn't necessarily know what the hell is going on per se. But they would be powerful enough to do stuff like that, right? So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much the answer to the question. Is the Zerg would want to test them, and they would not respond very well to that. So there would definitely be a lot of Zerg death, total Zerg death, in fact, but not exactly because you can't really exterminate the Zerg. They're too widespread for that. Certainly you can't exterminate them as a more conventional race or regency. We'll talk a little bit more about power levels in the next question. Then we're talking about stuff like, all right, did the Terrans negotiate something with the Ansifii? I don't know exactly what we would do about that. The Ansifii would probably be, they'd be petitioned by the Terrans to share their designs and stuff, because like their forms are not that different in terms of function. Like the Protoss are actually less humanoid than the Ansifii are as a comparison. The Retans are also pretty humanoid, so their technology could be used and leveraged by Terrans from the Daybreak Guild, right? And then, obviously the Askosi would be like, "What the hell's going on? Why do you've got Askosi? Who are these people?" And then they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's our ancestors! How did we get here? This is strange. What kind of strange coffee donator would have created such a situation where this happens?" That would definitely happen. And then, the Protoss. I think the Protoss would be befuddled, but they wouldn't necessarily be openly hostile. They would certainly be very watchful. There'd be a lot of witnesses on them. And if there was a hot conflict, which there definitely would be in some cases, like versus Zerg, but if there was a hot conflict, you could expect a very explosive start, and then things would sort of peter off a little bit later on. So thank you for your question, Myrian. Interesting hypothetical there. We're going to move on to Three Crow's question, which is going to require me to enable my browser view again, because we have a Xibalba Regencies tier list. And yes, it's just the text as the images. Don't worry about it. This tier list is power ranking is going to basically be who could be the most powerful, who has the most power. I'll read out the question before we actually fill this out. So Three Crow's question is, can you do a Xibalba tier list where you rank the regencies based on their potential to cause total destruction on a planetary, solar, or galactic scale? So I quickly fielded this tier maker list. And we are going to start filling them out. This list is in the same order that you'll find on the website. So if you're ever curious as to why that is why the list is like that. So first up, the Ansifii. I'm going to say, based on if our ultimate benchmark is galactic scale destruction, the Ansifii are probably a C tier regency. I was tempted to put them in D tier, but I think that they do have some very, very powerful weaponry. You got to remember that every regency has some way to do an apocalypse maneuver. That's sort of like going to be a thing that they can all do. But the method for which the Ansifis is that they can incinerate the worlds of planets, and in very extreme circumstances, they can just detonate entire worlds. So that is actually, that's like the baseline you need to be in order to be a C tier for galactic devastation and destruction. But they can't really go beyond planetary destruction. So that is probably where we leave them. There are 20 regencies, by the way, so I'm not going to be super detailed with all these answers, but I will try to my best to, at a glance, explain the answer. Resellium. They can deconstruct entire solar systems given enough time, like entire suns and stuff, given enough time. That is their purpose, right? So you would think they'd be really good at it. They're the best or on the best tier. B tier would be the best of like the regencies and races and stuff that are a little bit more on the fundamentally physical side of things. Resellium don't have a spiritual or cosmic significance to them. They don't really have any mystical powers or anything. It's very, very basic and very, very bare bones in that respect. The Embra Seat, they are D tier. They do not have the ability to really destroy planets. They can certainly irradiate stuff and make it really, really unlikely that you can live there for a very long amount of time. They make it hostile, but it'll eventually clear back up. They just never bothered developing technology that can blow everything up. They don't really have the ability to hold out long enough to use it, even if they did have it. So, the most they can do is steal from another regency. As a result, I don't really mark that as them, because technically anybody could do that. Keltar are the same way, but not because they can't destroy planets. It's because they choose not to. They view that as like absolutely the worst thing possible, whereas Ansifii have done it before. There's a general understanding among all of the regencies that you don't really want to blow up planets, because even though there's so many of them, they are technically a finite resource. Nobody's out there making new planets, so as far as they know. And even if they were making artificial worlds, such an expenditure would be incredibly costly, and as a result, would not create a net positive increase in the amount of resources that are available to be harvested for various efforts, be it civilizational or warlike. So the Keltar refuse to destroy planets, but I will say that they have the capability, so we'll sort them above Embra Seat. Closer to the left is going to be like D+ or whatever you could think of them as. The Githrovan are also going to be put into the D tier. I'll put them above the Keltar because the Githrovan are even more technologically savvy. In fact, they'll probably be the highest ranked D tier forever, because just like the Keltar, they refuse to destroy planets. They view them as the opportunity to have safeguarding life. I mean, they refuse to in the sense that they have technically had to do it in the past, but they view it as like the ultimate sacrifice, the worst thing, the ultimate failure, the worst thing that they could possibly do. And of course, my air conditioner shuts off, so suddenly I feel like I can hear every thought in my head at max volume. The Solar Throne. Well, these guys are actually going to be... oh, no, I wouldn't put them at A tier. They're going to be above or below the Resellium. We'll put them below the Resellium. I was forgetting what the different tiers meant. So S tier is probably will destroy the cosmos, and A tier is certainly could destroy, not the cosmos, but like, an entire galaxy is potentially in danger. Significant chunks of the galaxy would be in danger at A tier. B tier is like the solar system or beyond. C tier is on a planetary scale. So now we have a little bit, and D tier is just won't or don't, can't, stuff like that, can't or won't. Solar Throne absolutely could. That's not really their MO, because you need to have a living populace in order to demoralize them and enslave them. So they don't tend to do it, but they have done it in the past. If they need to really demoralize like a nation, they'll destroy the homeworld or something like that. That has been Solar Throne stuff and activities in the past. Makrodas, I'm going to put them underneath, above the Embra Seat, but underneath Keltar. They are no good at destroying planets either. Same sort of rub. Their technology is not exactly there. They're more of a scrappy kind, and the way that they get around that limitation is by taking control of enemies through mind control, and just by throwing numbers at the problem with the Dateron. So definitely a situation where they're not really equipped to destroy planets. Their apocalypse is more of a mind control device as opposed to a destroy the planet device. So just leaving that there. The Oros go behind the Ansifii, similar capabilities of planetary destruction, and certainly can use some very uncanny technology. But not exactly the same. Like, very, very similar answer to the Ansifii. They can do it. It's very expensive. They wouldn't do it very much normally. They don't necessarily have as many compunctions as the Keltar or the Githrovan do, but they still don't really like to do it. So they're probably bottom of C tier along with the Ansifii in that respect. The Dalventhos, I'd put them above the Ansifii. The Dalventhos can destroy planets, but most of the time they like to just terraform them and make them useless to anybody who's trying to do anything other than work through and use them. They convert them into their various, what would you call them? The server worlds that allow them to live an unconscious life in that sense, a digital life. So the Dalventhos are definitely capable of doing some funky things to planets. I don't know if you would really call that destruction as much as repurposing, but it's not fit for anybody else's life. So I would kind of make it analogous to destruction, and they do it very often. So actually the Dalventhos would be pretty high up there. But again, planetary scale only. You're not going to see them take over entire solar systems or anything. They will take over suns and stuff. They'll make like a Dalventhos equivalent of the shell. I'm blanking on the name for some reason. The Dyson sphere, or Dyson swarm and stuff like that. They'll make that sort of equivalent. Put the rune below Makral Das, but above Embra Seat. They are also incapable, generally speaking, of destroying planets. Most they can do is just strip mine it down to the last, ounce of metal or whatever precious material in the crust. They haven't really developed too much on any other sense. So you're getting a sense, like a concentration down at the D tier for stuff like that. We'll put the Orlithray below the Solar Throne, our third B tier regency for planetary scale and solar system scale disruption and destruction. The Orlithray don't necessarily destroy planets, but they definitely will take over every single thing on them. And they have been known to, negotiate the orbits of, what would you say, like asteroids and stuff. The funniest thing just occurred to me that when you watch Starship Troopers and apparently like the planets or like the bugs change the orbit of an asteroid and use that as an invasion device or something. That is a funny idea. That is not exactly how the Orlithray do it, but I guess it's not a billion miles away. So that's some kind of comparison you can make there. We'll put the Bithrantier underneath the Delventhos. They are capable of really, really powerful feats of engineering, but they stopped doing that a long time ago for the same reason that everybody else stopped doing it a long time ago. So they don't do it very often. But maybe a little bit, just more scary with the technology. Their capabilities are pretty good as far as that is concerned. So definitely something that you got to watch out for. We have the Nadarasatha up next. I want to say the Nadarasatha, they make it, we'll put them in C tier. I'll actually put them right behind Delventhos, because if I can figure out how to do that in this. Okay. We'll put them right behind Delventhos. I'm going to zoom out a little bit in the zoom so we can see a little bit easier. The reason why we would put them here is because the way that we're going out about this is we are charging forward with the idea that the Delventhos and the Nadarasatha taking over a planet and making it not hospitable for anybody other than themselves counts as destruction. That's the same reason why the Orlithray are up here in B tier, because they can do that on a solar system scale and beyond, but not quite a galactic scale, right? There's a very big jump there. And the Delventhos and the Nadarasatha do it on a planetary scale. So that is why they are on that front. HitEmUp is able to take over entire planets, so it's definitely able to do that at a high level. You got to remember it's a super consciousness. It marks our first A tier, capable of taking over and expressing will over massive amounts of technology and biotics and organics, right? So absolutely could do some very, very scary things to the very large amount of territory. So definitely fear HitEmUp, I would say. But hey, it's got benign intentions, so you know how that is. Now, going a little bit further down, the Omindris. We're going to put those right underneath the Orlithray. They can technically make it destroyed no matter what with the Omindir, but more in practice, they liquefy the surfaces of a lot of planets and sort of turn them into breeding grounds, if you will, for all of the metal spawn. So that is where they end up plying their trade and that's their home world, their idea of a home world. So, when we get to the point where we're building the Omindir and the Diridris and stuff, you can expect they would have their own biome, own tile set, if you will. That would be very much about metal stuff, like the liquid metal pools and all that all over the place. So pretty interesting stuff. Put the Psychora above the HitEmUp, actually. They are very, very powerful, even though it takes them great efforts to deploy their power into this three-dimensional space. They do come from an extra-dimensional, another realm, if you will, that has 4 dimensions, analogous to our own, adjacent to, if you will. And they come in here to harvest resources for their fight back in their own dimension, where they are not favored at all. So you can imagine a situation where they feel very desperate, survival instincts kicking in, etc. We would put the Psychora up there in terms of the A tier stuff, and they are definitely capable of let's just say they're able to eventually use their extra dimensional powers to nullify very wide sectors of space. In fact, there was a point where I was considering, the concept of cosmic voids. I was considering, what if that was actually the Psychora, just negating space? Would have been an interesting thing. I'm not sure that I would go for it now. We'll put the Cathethrons below the Solar Throne. They are technically, their capabilities are higher, but they just by and large don't do this. They are capable of basically creating pockets where, they around entire swaths of terrain, swaths of space. They are capable of basically making things exist out of time. So that's pretty difficult to penetrate at that point. It's basically creating a singularity around an entire pocket area. Like they create a pocket dimension almost. And so that's their home world. Trying to go in there is very difficult, let alone surviving it. So good luck. You'd need some very specialized technology for that. That is only really available to the Cathethrons. So that's their home world. That's one of the reasons why you can never really get rid of the Cathethrons, is that even though they don't have the craziest numbers, they're not like a very, I was going to say prodigious, but that's not the right term. Prolific. They're not a prolific race, but they, good luck actually killing them or damaging them or invading their homeworld, so to speak, because of the way that they create pocket dimensions for themselves to exist within. So that is definitely that. On another planetary case, here is the Thruk. I'm trying to decide where to put them. I guess we can put them at the top of C. The reason why we put them there is because basically entire planets can become Thruk. Thruk spread through the Earth and through the terrain itself. So the idea of them basically deconstructing and destroying entire planets it's happened before, actually, just plainly. They have done it many times. So they are one of the few regencies that still actively does this sort of thing. So definitely got to beware of that. We'll put the Avot underneath the Thruk. They are, again, maybe with enough effort, they could destroy things, but they don't usually destroy things. They can transmute them into energy, and that's where the Avot really ply their trade. And so in a more similar vein to like the Dalventhos and the Natarastatha, where they take territories and space and stuff, and they say, this is now going to be for us and us alone. That's sort of what the Avot do. And of course, I saved the weirdest for last. The Kolopoazos have utter dominion over everything. And as a result, good luck trying to do anything with them other than, you can't defeat them. You can only make it less satisfying for them to win. That's basically how you can think of them as. Pretty good stuff there. And the air conditioner pops up just to cool everybody off because the Kolopoazos, goddamn, they're hot. And the immortal words of none other than Smarty Cakes. So hopefully that answers your question, 3Crow. I'll link this in the description if people want to make the Xibalba Regencies tier list. They can do that themselves for any particular reason. So there you go, Xibalba Regencies tier list, and now it's in the description. Hope you guys enjoy that link, and we'll catch you guys around for more Xibalba conversations in the future. But right now we got another question to answer, and it's gonna be HitEmUps. So HitEmUp first prefaced his question asking about when the Atreus gets buffed. Joke's on him. I was actually working on that earlier today, right before I started the podcast. So by the time you're listening to this, my friend, check the updates because it's happened. In all serious note, I'm just interested in hearing it more about both the Tier 3 robotics. I think he meant, did he say something? Oh, no, I think he also was talking about Askosi, but we already did that. So the Tier 3 robotics for Protoss, he wants to know their place in the game, what my goals are with them, etc. So as far as I can tell right now, Protoss do have some struggles, and HitEmUp as a predominantly Protoss player, though he's played a lot of all the races. I think it's Protoss over Terran over Zerg has been his preference so far. Protoss have some struggles with certain compositions, and I think some of that was due to like the overtuned Apostle nature. Like the Apostles were really, really strong. But it did expose that Protoss don't really have a sniper type of unit. And so I was debating whether or not to make the Oscilliant or the Mainstay, which are some new units that are coming for the robotics branch for the Protoss. I was debating whether or not to make those more of that. But the Oscilliant is most likely going to be a bullet hells type unit in that it'll be more crowd control-y. I'm planning on making it fire a bunch of projectiles similar to the Star Sovereign, actually. And by the way, even though they will be dumbfire in that they'll be interception-based and they won't lock onto targets or anything, they'll just fire in a pattern when within range of enemies. The cool thing about the Oscilliant is that it does have the binding plasma benefit, which is the Gladius passive that spreads that basically creates like the effect fields and pushes the projectiles out and stuff. So the Oscilliant is going to be really cool for that reason. So that's going to end up being a crowd control specialist, if you will. Definitely, it's either a tier 3 unit or a tier 4 unit. On the website it says tier 3, but there's at least one unit that's going to be moved to the Synthetic Synod, and the Clarion is going to move to the Ardent Authority, while the Architect moves to the Unitary Union and gets boosted in power. So we're going to see more accessible Clarions, Architects on a different structure than the Acantor, which will further the difference between, like, you know, when you want to go for one or the other. That will probably also naturally boost the amount of times that you'll be going for Positrons, Servitors, or Analogs, because you have 5 combat units out of the Ardent Authority right now. So if we replace the Architect with a non-combat unit, then you'll only have 4, and then you'll have 2 separate siege units on 2 separate structures instead of being on the same structure. So there'll be less overlap for the competition there, while the Servitor is more chaff and generic sort of frontliner, if you will, or not really frontliner, but mid-range support. Positron is a little bit more than mid-range support with crowd control, and the Analog is more of a utilitarian unit, anti-splash, that sort of thing. Synergizes nicely with things like golems and, of course, Clarions themselves, which also come from the Ardent. So that'll be, I think that one change will be very, very positive for the sort of role distribution and balance between the robotics units. So with the Architect being increased in power and moving to the Unitary Union, which is the new Protoss structure that's going to be added, it will also train the Mainstay, the Vibrance, the Krysilliant are also planned right now to come from the Unitary Union, but at least one of those will be going to the Synthetic Synod. So we might actually see 4 units get added, where we add 3 units for the Unitary Union and 1 unit for the Synthetic Synod. But right now, my plan was that the Mainstay, which was initially set up to be a sort of, you could say like an answer to needing things like a Dracodin or even like an Atreus, right? Stuff like that with regards to the, like a more, basically a deliberate mid-range support unit that works very nicely at the high tier. That is sort of what the Mainstay is supposed to be. The Potentate is pretty powerful for that and will only get more powerful when it's revised at some point. But the Mainstay, I think, will be in a nice spot for also providing that just from a robotics standpoint, and probably have maybe a little bit less range, like 5 range instead of 6 like the Dracodin does, but still pretty good at pretty mobile, and so it'll be kind of like an idle in terms of mobility, probably maybe a little bit faster. So that was my plan for that. That's just going to allow you to still have a nice mid-range kind of core to your army in the late game. Without it falling off the way that Dracodins obviously do. So I think the damage density of the Mainstay will be a little bit more, it'll just be a little bit better. By that I mean, like, they're going to clump up a little bit more than the Dracodin will. They'll be a bit more size efficient, or at the very least they'll be the same but be better. So you want more. If you had to choose between an army of Dracodins of the same size and an army of Mainstays of the same size, the Mainstays would just be significantly better, but not because, like, the Dracodin will have some quirks about it that is always going to be different. Like, for one, it comes out of the gateway. That's like a big thing, and you'll probably have a lot of gateways. The Union, though, is going to be a bit more on the expensive side, being a tier 3 production structure. But when you get a lot of them, the Mainstay will be your core unit out of that structure, with the Krysilliant being for crowd control, as mentioned, if it is indeed a Unitary Union unit. It feels like maybe a unit that could go to the Synthetic Synod if I make it powerful enough, but we will see about that. And then the Vibrance. So the Vibrance is supposed to be a cloaked unit, similar to the Barghest and the Kabbalist, and I guess the Witness, where when the unit is taking damage, it first takes damage to the energy, similar to the Anseal, but it doesn't shield other units. And then the energy is regenerating much faster when the unit is cloaked. And so obviously it has that cloak effect, the steady shroud effect. So when it's not in combat, it will basically recloak and then regenerate energy, which is effectively health. So it's sort of like this unit that has 3 tiers of health, right? It has the energy and then the shields and then the HP. And so it's meant to be this very, very powerful tank unit. It has some very wide AoE in the current planning, but it's kind of like a pulse that's around itself. So you can kind of think about it as like a unit that you probably want on the front line that will release this pulse attack around itself, which is the first of its kind. I guess you can maybe draw a comparison to the Anthelian, actually. Maybe the Anthelian is technically the first of its kind that has the pulse attack. And the Vibrance will do that as well. There's an open question as to whether or not the energy mechanism is really that interesting. Maybe instead of that, we could just have it be that the Vibrance has like an Ecclesiast proc, similar to the Ecclesiast or Matrix procs in terms of the units damaged by its attack bleed shields out. You can imagine using the Vibrance if it's like, surrounded by many Zerg units, for example, it's proccing the shield restore on every single one of the units that it hits. That's a pretty significant amount of shield injection every second, because the attack is every second. So that's pretty sick as an idea. Just thinking about that, I kind of like that better than the initial option that I had come up with. But anyway, we'll think about that. But generally speaking, the Krysilliant is going to be for crowd control, sustained, like by itself, it's not going to have sustained, but it's going to be for great sustained damage if you can keep it alive. Be kind of expensive and lumbering. Probably move to the synthetic synod. The Vibrance from the Unitary Union is going to offer the most likely that shield restore, I think, and provide a lot of utility, a lot of support in that sense. The mainstay will be your core unit. The architect will be your siege unit, and then maybe we'll have a fourth unit added to the Unitary Union. Or sorry, well, that would be 3 units at the Unitary Union, and then 3 units at the Synthetic Synod. So yeah, maybe that's fine. Maybe we don't need to add a 4th unit, but that is that. And again, the Xenolith is another unit or structure that needs to get added that will give you the ability to recall units, similar to the Didact, but without requiring an Argosy. Obviously, you just put the structure down, and when it finishes, you can recall. So I think that's pretty cool, pretty nifty, pretty neat. But yeah, with that all said, I think that's all I have to say for the question. Hopefully that answered all of the ideas. Some of these concepts are pretty old, like I think a year old when I first came up with this kind of stuff. So don't be surprised if you're like, wait, those concepts don't really work with the current Protoss because they're like very old, right? But updating them to give you the more broad strokes of like what I'm after with like a core mid-range unit that you can still scale up into for tier 3 fights and like late game fights. Core or not really core, but like a really powerful sustain unit in the Vibrance, moving the architect over there and increasing its power at range so that it feels more distinct and better than like what it currently does now. And then obviously the Clarion Shuffle, the fact that the Krysilliant would be a very powerful crowd control unit that you can throw into the Synthetic Synod. That stuff is pretty neat. So hopefully that is exciting for all of the Protoss players there and terrifying for all of the players who hate the Protoss. Going back to Xibalba for a moment, the Shambler asks about Christianizing Xibalba regencies. The Pope once again comes with an offer you cannot refuse, this time asking for the Christianization of a faction's worth of 6 or more of alien or cosmic regencies in Xibalba. Which of these more bizarre regencies receive the change, and how do you go about making it believable in the setting? Well, 6 is a lot to cover in a single question, and, we're trying to keep this one rolling here so we don't hit the 2-hour mark, of course. So let's talk a little bit about the regencies really quickly. Again, obviously I have this tier list up. I'm just pulling it back open so I can just immediately look at it. But cosmic regencies. So the bizarre regencies would be, for my money, at least by my classification here, it would be things like Kolopoazos, Thruk, Avot, Katithron, Psychora, Omindris, Ganamemter, Nadarasatha Bithrantir, or Lethray. That's 10. So that's like the bottom 10. Maybe you could also extend that to include Oros, Dalventhos, Rune, but I think that would be stretching it. So we'll take from the bottom 10. We need to get 6 of them to work. Well, Thruk and Avot they're not conventionally sapient, so I don't think we can really go with them. Kolopoazos would only do so as a bit, as like a thing to entertain themselves, so I guess that's a possibility, but for now we'll set them aside. The Katithrons, would they be Christian? I feel like it would be really hard to do that. Psychora, it wouldn't be I guess it wouldn't be impossible that some of them that suffer from symmetry sickness and stay in this dimension instead of ever returning home, they're cut off for one reason or another, would find a different faith, find a new faith. Could absolutely happen. So I guess that would be one of them. The Omindris. There's not really anything... Well, I say that's definitely not true. I was going to say there's not really anything that the Diridris believe or the way that they operate that would contradict some Christian beliefs. But I don't think that would work out, actually. I feel like, no, the Diridris probably have some seriously... at odds beliefs with the Bible and stuff, with the language espoused by Christianity. What else do we have here? You could probably make Ganamemter Christian. I'm not 100% sure. It could have a Christian organ or whatever, a Christian body. That would be kind of interesting. I don't think you could get the Nadarasatha on board. Maybe the Bithrantir would try to... there would be a sect of Bithrantir that try to pray the time away so that they can finally die in peace. Not 100% sure on that one. And obviously, like Orlithray, I don't know that you can have like that goes back to like the Zerg idea of like the Nazarene organ or whatever, where it's or the Nazarene tendril rather, where it's like the Orlithray are like they're the Great Flood. that's the only way you can really make that one work. And the Orlithray don't really answer to the other regencies per se in the same way that you can kind of communicate to Zerg a little bit with specialized technology as a Terran or Protoss, or indeed as an Askosi. So there is that. There is that. So far we have Kolopoazos. They would do it just to continue fucking with people. Cathethrons might do it. They would go through a phase, perhaps, because to them they live out their whole life at once, so it wouldn't really be that different. Obviously, Gadamemptor, you could have a body of Gadamemptor that does that. The Diridris, I don't think they would be able to. The Psychora could. Some of the people who have been afflicted with symmetry sickness could definitely draw upon their struggles in that respect. I mean, the problem is that with Xibalba, there's no humans, so you can't have Christianity anyway. It's never going to be believable, so I can't really satisfy this question. But, I can talk about the Mithrantir, I can talk about the Gadamemptor, I can talk about Amindris, Psychora, Catethron, and Kolopoazos. So technically that is 6. Technically that answers the question, but I cannot. How would I make it believable? I wouldn't. You just can't. There's no humans, so... There haven't been humans. It's not even like a hypothetical, like, oh, it's far in the future after like, not really. Like, I mean, so far in the future and so far away that, it's not really the same thing whatsoever. There was a galactic reset, a universal reset. So, not exactly the same thing. All right, we're moving on to the final question. We got Enozlliks with his debut here. He's got a banger as well. If World War III were to happen very soon and there was a draft, will you accept it and go to war, or will you try to evade it? And if you try to evade it, what tactic will you use to get away with it and not serve any consequences? Well, I don't actually think I could serve because I have glasses. And I'm like 20 pounds overweight or 10 pounds overweight or something. So, I mean, I guess that probably doesn't matter because you just train that off. But, I don't know. I was actually thinking about the military idea like somewhat recently. Like, it probably wouldn't suck that much. They try to obviously get rid of your individuality to some degree, but you can preserve that. You can be stoic about that. That's not really that big of a deal. But actually, serving in a war is a very, very different prospect than just joining up before you, like, without actually needing to go deploy anywhere. Really, at best you go to like Germany or something, one of our military bases around the world, as opposed to anything else. So. With all that said, I don't think I would need to dodge the draft because of my, the fact that I wear glasses, and I'm not in the best of shape. Not in the worst, but not in like cutting edge shape. Right out of high school or whatever. Actually out of high school I was much fatter, but 5 years after high school I was slightly skinnier than I am now. So that would have been my peak shape. Maybe then I would have been able to get in. When it comes to working on like a hypothetical where, say, I'm a person and I'm trying to dodge the draft and I otherwise don't have anything stopping me from being drafted. Well, I guess I'd first probably try to see if there's some non-combat job I can do that I would qualify for, or maybe I'd try to go to officer school or something where it's like less likely that I'm on the front line. That would definitely be a bit different. I don't know how likely that would be. I'd have to do some research on that for sure. And then if say I'm a hypothetical person who is trying to dodge the draft otherwise, you can always move to a different location. I don't think I would want to stay within the country if I was in that situation. I wouldn't want to leave America personally, but if I'm somebody who absolutely wants to dodge the draft for whatever reason, then what would the path be to that? Probably trying to find a way to move to another country, like be very watchful of World War III being about to break out and a draft being about to happen, and then concerning yourself with that, and then pre-qualifying yourself for like moving to Mexico or moving to Canada or something like that. Meet up with Dominic and HitEmUp and Mesk and stuff, or meet up with Ecalypso down in Mexico and whoever else. So shit like that maybe. Maybe that's that possibility. Not a very, I feel like not a very detailed answer here, but I'm not 100% sure how I would even start to try to dodge that. And I think a soft way to dodge that would be to, see if you could be a drone operator or something, I guess, like something remote, something where you're not even on the front line to begin with. Or if you are in the front line, you're maybe not in, you might be higher a value target for the enemy, but odds are you're going to be in a bit more of a safer spot, as a officer or something. Some of the officers obviously serve on the front lines. Many of them do, but many of them are also, like, depending on how upranked they are, many of them are also a bit different, right? So it would be a leadership thing. I think if I was gonna go, I would want to go as a leader. I don't think I would necessarily want to go as a grunt, but you know what? Even if you're going as a grunt, you can still find things to do that are good, that are valuable, and so check that out, I guess. I don't know. Not sure what else to say on that subject, but there you go. Thanks for joining us in Enozlliks, and thanks to everybody who donated on Coffee. That brings us to the show outro. It's been a hell of a time. Been a bit long since the last podcast. We'll get back into the swing of things in terms of the speed, and we'll also be finishing up the Cosmonarchy compass sometime soon. I'll probably edit that into the description in the next day or so. So if you're watching this immediately, it's not there, but if you're watching this in a couple days, it is there probably. Check it out. Otherwise, stay tuned on the ModDB page. Stay tuned for more progress on things like our new website and our fourth race and our new tech stack for things like iScript and other things. And of course, stay tuned for 2v2 tournaments, Neblime's beginner stream, more casters, more commentators, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. GG!